We want to look at the first three major ministerial nominations that have been made by the president to Parliament, with many jostling for positions. Can President John Dramani Mahama keep the promise of a lean government with the 60 ministers, even as he is inundated with thousands of CVs? Kojo, where do we take the story?
I mean, we'll delve into, all that is making rounds in terms of who and who wants to become, ministers. But again, you look at the nominations that he's done, and then you can do a projection into what we do expect. But, I mean, the minority in Parliament is also on the heels of government to say that you're doing these appointments in what they describe as tot.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know tot. When you go to the drinking bar, there's a small bottle there, So they think
shots, right?
Shots, as you know. And they feel that, no, you had some 1 month to prepare, you have to come in with it. So ask the people who really understand.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the president at 40. There's no standard which talks about how a president should do his appointment, right? So ask them to go into it. And then, aside that, there's also an issue about the code of conduct of these public officials, right? It's been in the discussion for some time. We are told that it is resting at the presidency. Where is it? Now that we are appointing new ministers and new government officials and new public officials, we should get that particular document that is going to tell them how the republic is going to watch how you conduct yourself, or how you are expected to conduct yourself as a public official. Okay. We need to discuss that.
Let's talk to let's bring in our panelists, our guests this morning, because there's a plethora of issues that we'll get into. Joining us via Zoom is Dr. John Osai Kwapong. He is a CDD fellow, and of course, Dr. Kwame Asan Asante. He is the head for the Center of European Studies at the University of Ghana. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Having us.
And good morning for having us. Yeah.
Great. Good morning. Thank you so much. So I think we want to start from your initial remarks on those three appointments that have been made so far to the Energy Ministry, the Finance Ministry, and of course, the Ministry of Justice. Let me start with you, Dr. John Osai Kwapong. What do you make of those three appointments? We know that minority are, chastising, should I say, that it's tots, but it's come. What do you make of it?
Yeah, good morning once again. Well, as you know, there's no formula for how a president decides to roll out, his appointees. And so if he wants to, release the names of the persons he's appointing to his government in batches of 2, 3, 4, I think it's the prerogative of the president to do that. Of the three appointees, the one whose work or public engagement I have followed very closely is the Honorable John Jinapor. I tend to religiously watch him whenever he was paired with Honorable Ejapa Mesa on Good Morning Ghana. I always found his insights very refreshing. I think he has a good understanding of the energy sector, the challenges facing the sector, and how you address and overcome some of those challenges facing the sector. And so, again, for me, the president has made a very good choice. At the end of the day, he knows his people very well, and he knows those who can serve his government well. So regardless of the public commentary or how Ghanaians would react with good intention, ultimately I think we have to trust the president's judgment that he's making picks based on people he believes will serve him and serve his government well. The two others, I haven't really followed their work that closely. But as I said, I'm sure the president has every good reason for why he's picking these individuals to serve in these key positions in his government.
Okay.
Maybe, Doc, these three people were deputy ministers during John Mahama's first term as president. Do you think the president is probably promoting people who deputized during his first term, looking at the experience they've gained over the years and haven't been in Parliament for the last 8 years, and to say that, well, I think that you do now are matured enough to head these ministries that you were deputizing in my first term?
Yeah, I would agree with that assertion, that after 8 years, he's looking at them and saying to himself, I can trust you to hold the substantive position, not just as a deputy, but as the minister for that sector or for that ministry. I'm sure that is part of the president's decision-making calculus.
Dr. Kwame Asante, let's get your initial thoughts as well. I mean, from all the commentary that have been poured in so far, there's nothing about, whether or not these three gentlemen are qualified for the position. But in terms of Dr. Kesela Tuforsen, there was, some comments I saw about what he had over Setekwe, because people were actually thinking that Setekwe would be the one to be nominated as Minister for Finance. But over to you, your initial remarks on these three ministerial appointments.
Yeah, when it comes to ministerial appointment, people would wish that other people, instead of what the president has appointed, should be the case. So it is to be expected. But you see, ministerial appointment is based on a number of principles. One is the issue of what competence is first and foremost. Even though there are scholars who believe that is loyalty and all that, they have their view, I have my view. I disagree. Because I hold a simple view, and my simple view is that you are not appointing people because they are loyal to you, because they are your friends, your pals, or your cronies, but that you want resource. And if you are resource-oriented, competence is number one. And so against that backdrop, you can understand the thinking of the president in nominating these three people. Let's start with Kesela Tuforsen. Look at this background. Incredible background. Very brilliant person. He has gone through the mill in terms of academic credentials. A tax scholar and economist from Oxford University, and then Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology with all that. And over the years, we have seen him working seriously at Parliament and leading the charge in terms of economic engagement and all that. If you look at his public, engagements and all that, he's been fantastic. And you'll recall that when they were going to prosecute their electioneering agenda, Asiedin Ketia made it known when they were, doing the reshuffle in Parliament, Asiedin Ketia made it known that they are putting such leadership position into office for the simple reason that the election is going to be fought on the grounds of economics, and Tuforsen is the man on the beat. So at Tuforsen, we have seen him in his parliamentary engagement where he has been virtually the spokesman in terms of what economic activities. That aside, remember he was a deputy minister. So he's he's familiar with the terrain of what the finance ministry and what goes in there. He's very much aware of the lingering challenges that confront this country relative to economics. And then issue of taxation, he always talk about that. And remember, take it or leave it, we need taxes to survive. And he has superior knowledge in that regard. Issue of finance, he is very critical. So I have no doubt in my mind that he is the best choice for the work. Let's look at Dr. Ayini. Fantastic scholar by all standards. He worked under Marita Brew as a Deputy Attorney General and Minister for Justice. And he acquitted himself so well with the work that he did. And if you look at his parliamentary engagements, he has been nothing but an astute scholar, a practitioner, and he really understands the game that are embedded in the work as Minister for Justice. He's very much experienced, both in theory and in practice. Remember, before this time, he was teaching in the university as a scholar and acquitted himself very well. And then he was, before this time, a practitioner of the law. So he's very much known to the two wells relative to the law practice: experience and what? Theory and practice. Remember that theory without practice is empty, and practice without theory is blind. He has the two wells. So I believe that putting them together, he's going to what? Work and work well. We must also bear in mind that he's familiar with that territory. So he's not new to that job, except that the party is taking him to another level, which I have no doubt in my mind that he will be able to meet to expectation. Let's look at this Gina Paul, a fantastic scholar in that area. He has all the credentials. And what is more interesting about him is his public engagement in the area. He demonstrates superior knowledge of the subject matter. And for me, what is more refreshing is that he has a background in economics that ties up into what he's doing. And he also has the two wells, the theoretical well, the practical well. So all in all, these three appointments, I believe that it will serve the state very well. And Jinapo, I have no doubt in my mind that he is able to articulate his views clearly. He's able to explain the issues to us well. Sometimes it's not just the knowledge that you have and that you have that experience, but also your ability to engage stakeholders, engage the public, articulate the position of government clearly, bring the distinction in you. So I think that all in all, these three appointments are nothing but an apt description of what an appointment ought to be.
Right. And Doc, let me just add that one word that we've used a lot to describe the comeback of Mahama is legacy. And some of the NDC communicators used to say that, Mahama is here for legacy, and you can tell from the kind of people he will appoint. Rich background, of course, and the expertise is there. And do you get the sense that this appointment sets the pace for the work of legacy that is ahead of John Dramani Mahama in terms of the choice of,
There is no doubt in my mind that Mahama is fighting for nothing but what legacy. He is the only politician in Ghana that has gone through all the things, the positions you can think of. An MP, then a minister, then a vice president, a president, and a president. Not even Nkrumah has gone through this. So he has a wealth of experience. Having gone through all this, what does he want to show? He wants to leave his work, because politics comprise of two things: ideas and legacy. The context of what ideas and referendum of your work. What work would the world remember you with if you are out of the political plane? And I'm sure that's the last national service you want to do for this country. So he has no choice than to leave something monumental. And this time around, I'm sure he can do it. If you look at even when he was in office, the kind of records that he left, amazing record. He's going to take it to another level. And that is what we are seeing with this type of appointment. Remember the earlier one that he threw in relative to those who are going to manage the security in the interim. You saw them, very experienced people who know the ABC of the security and all that. So you realize that at the back of his mind, he's looking for something big. And the big is the legacy that he wants to leave. I have no doubt in mind. That is the focus and direction of the president.
Could you interesting thoughts?
I mean, let me bring in Dr. Kwapon to look at, what do these appointments mean in terms of direction of the government? Okay. Doc, help us understand. If you hear these three people, Dr. Kese Latofosun, John Abdullahi Jinapo, and Dr. Dominic Ayine, what sort of direction of the government do these three appointments communicate to you as a watcher?
At least if you focus on the Ministry of, if you look at finance as well as energy, there are two things that they would have to contend with. One would be whatever legacy challenges they inherit from the current government. Already, you've seen some of the conversations around the energy sector and what this government is up to. So you need the kind of persons in these roles that you have all the confidence in that, one, they can help you manage and deal with whatever legacy issues, challenges that you'll be inheriting from your predecessor. But what it also then signals then is, because you also have your own government priorities, things that you promised during the election, you also need the kind of hands that would help you be able to implement those policies and those ideas. And so the signal here is that I have in these persons, and then if you add the AG, I have in these persons the hands that can help me both manage whatever legacy issues I'm inheriting, but also who would be able to help me achieve my policy agenda in these key ministries.
What should they, the three people who have been nominated now, be focusing on? If you look at the enormity of the challenge that confronts this government, especially a government that promised to, scrap e-levy, betting tax, and what have you, what should the finance minister especially be looking at? The energy minister, John Jinapor, he understands the sector. What should he be doing, as well as the AG? Because in all of these two ministries, finance and energy, they will be entering into contract that needs the expert advice of the Attorney General.
That's a very difficult question to answer, in terms of, what should they be focusing on? Because there are quite a number of, as I previously mentioned, ideas or policy, promises around the economy, around the energy sector, even around matters of governance, that will definitely go through, the AG's review and things like that. So for me, my broad response would be, they would have to figure out that in the first 6 months to a year, what are the kinds of issues that would have the most immediate impact in trying to address whatever challenges that are faced with the economy, with the nation's fiscal position, as well as in the energy sector. I'm sure for the Honorable Jinapor, one of the biggest things on his mind would be averting an energy crisis, because we've been hearing some of that being discussed in public spaces, that that is one of the legacy problems that they would have to deal with, the extent of which we are yet to fully know. But assuming that all of the facts that we are hearing are correct, then one of his immediate priorities should be how to ensure that we avert such any talk of an energy crisis. Same, and he would have to work closely then with the finance ministry, because if part of that challenge is a money issue, then how does the Ministry of Finance position the government in such a way that it would be able to respond to whatever fiscal challenges? There's been conversations also about the IMF program, right? And whether the government would be interested in working or at least seeking some form of a renegotiation. So I'm sure that would occupy Dr. Atuforsen's attention and energies. Not forgetting some of the major taxes that were promised during the campaign that they will be repealed, the COVID-19 levy, the e-levy as well. Those two, if you repeal them, have major consequences for our fiscal position and the expected revenue that government was going to generate from these two sources. One of the things that I said during the campaign was that it's okay to promise repeal of certain fiscal or tax handles, but you have to find a way to offset them. And so that for me would be one of the immediate challenges or should I say one of the immediate issues that would preoccupy the Minister of Finance, which is how do we ensure that we can offset any revenue losses that would come from repealing these two tax handles, and how soon do we want to do it?
Right. Well, we did say there were a plethora of issues. Should we move on to the conduct of public officials? Now, the last time I heard anything about this bill, Kojo, was when the president met in Kumasi, Ghana Bar Association. He delivered a remark and he said that before his tenure ends, that bill will be passed. And nothing was heard about the bill, the passage and all that. And yesterday, President Mahama made that speech and re-emphasized that they will pass the bill. I know that a lot of civil society organizations, including Occupy Ghana, Coalition of Civil Society Organizations, have said that the delay in the passage of this bill shows the unwillingness to fight corruption. Now, President Mahama says we are going to pass this bill. I don't know if it's a matter of waiting in anticipation for it to be passed quickly, or should we even be looking at what the bill seeks to do and then find out where to go from there. So let me throw this to Dr. Kwame Asante. Obviously, it's a good call that we are going to pass this bill, but is that all there is to do when it comes to conduct of public officials, to simply pass that bill?
It is the first step that you need a law to regulate the conduct of people, because dealing with governance and accountability, programs, you always have to tie it with what rules. It must be spelled out in black and white so that people would, inform themselves that these are the rules of the game. So that is the first port of call. The bill ought to be passed. But not only that, because if you listen to his speech, the president's speech, he detailed about four important areas: finance, investment, constitutional review, and then governance, and the last one was corruption and accountability issues. So legislation is critical here. So those bills must come in to support the existing one. But having said this, you need to take the conversation further. I will want the Attorney General, the nominated one, when he's given the nod, to look at the issue of this thing about declaration of assets, right? The law that exists, it for me is the most annoying, and it doesn't help anybody. All right, you go and deposit all your things in an envelope and nobody see the content on it. That law has ceased to be a useful law if we really want to fight corruption, and particularly so when you are talking about conflict of interest. So something must be done about it so that we have a law that will stand the test of time. It's one of the things that I expect the new Attorney General to be able to handle that. Not only that, there are other bills would have gone through parliamentary processes and they are awaiting the signature of the president. It is important for the new incoming Attorney General, who is a lawyer of what? The legal advisor of the government, to advise the president to take a critical look and address them. That also must tie in with the issue of constitutional review, which was one of the campaign promises of John Mahama. And that, yes, so the Attorney General should be able to help the president so that the conversation on this must start. Stakeholder engagement and all that. Yesterday, the report, the executive summary was presented and we had a discussion all over and all that. This must be brought to a sharp focus, and the Attorney General must facilitate this one so that you get the necessary input and the necessary action. When you get all the rules set, then you are in a better position to enforce the rules. And enforcement, you cannot achieve any of these things when you don't enforce the rules. And that you should be able to support the enforcement agencies with not only the rules, but resources to work with. And that also send me to the realms of autoforcing. That for you to be able to achieve your dreams and aspirations, after having passed all the laws and all that, there must be the need to enforce those rules. And you enforce with resources, both human and material. What are the resources that you are going to? So that must budget and all that. He must address his mind to that. And still with autoforcing, I expect him to look at the taxes, which some of them Dr. Osai Kwapong has touched on beautifully. We want to look at the taxes. For me, if you want to what? Abolish e-levy, it is a no for me. Okay. The best you can do is to reduce the incidence of taxation, the burden, all right? Because these are the hanging fruits that you can lay hands on and all that. Remember, we have lived with this 1% burden, and we are moving on. Even there are other nuisance taxes that we are bearing. But this taxation, I think that the best the government can do, even though they promise to abolish, you can start by gradually reducing the burden so that from 1% it can come a little down. Then you bring in a lot of people so that you rake in a lot of resources. Remember that you can never build any capacity of the state without the need to generate your own resources and move on. And that ties in what innovative ways to create internally generated funds to support the effort. It's not every day that we have a cap in hand, globe-trotting, looking for resources to support our core. And that sent me to the area of mining. If you look at the fact that just within the first quarter of last year, small-scale mining gave us $2.2 billion, then I believe that we must put in more effort. Sanitize the system, give license to people, let them conduct the business the way it ought to be done. And that will save our environment, will save our water bodies, will save our lives. And then we'll get employment. Because that sector alone, within that first quarter, was able to employ 1 million young people. So if you make it with a full program, you can imagine the number of people you can employ and the resources you can generate. We are in IMF looking for $3 billion. But let me also moving into other areas of finance.
Doc, I guess that especially we'll get there, but let's bring in Dr. Osai Kwapong on this same code of conduct bill. Doc, this has been at the presidency, we understand, for quite some time now. Should a new government just pick it from the presidency and forward it to Parliament, or they should take their time, go through it and see what needs to be changed before it's then sent to Parliament?
I think it would. It would be helpful if they can also have a second look at the content of the Code of Conduct bill, see whether there are additional provisions that they want to add. So, for example, during the campaign, I recall that one of the things President Mahama promised was that no member of his government, no political appointees will be allowed to purchase any kind of state property, whether it's a land, a house, things like that. So if those things are not included in a Code of Conduct bill, I'm sure it will be something that he would want to have as part of it. But if they can take a look at it, quickly make whatever necessary revisions there is to make, and then send it to Parliament for approval, that will be helpful, especially as we are still waiting for all of the political appointees, especially the ministers, deputy ministers, to go through vetting. By the time the government is fully constituted, if you can have it in place to guide conduct, that would be very helpful. At the same time, though, we don't have to wait. We don't have to necessarily wait for the bill for the president to reinforce his message to his appointees that, look, there is a certain conduct that I'm expecting as you begin your tenure in my administration, right? Not that the bill is not important, but I believe as we wait for the bill to come to fruition, he can reinforce that message of the kind of conduct that he's expecting from people, that will be serving in his administration.
All right.
Dr. Kwame Asante wanted to get into something related, Doc. Maybe let's hear him out before we move on to other stories.
Yes, I was trying to link all the code of conduct in a certain fashion that will really give us the results. Because you see, the code is nothing when it's not enforced. The code is nothing when people cannot those who want the code to be seen to be working don't articulate them so that even those who don't know will get to know it. Even the doubting Thomases will be alive to the fact that the code is working. So advocacy must come in, all right? Yes, people are aware of it, but let's make conscious effort to speak on those issues, educate people about it, and all that. And that is a function of NCC. Institutions must come in. Institutions that help in advocacy, they must come in. The media must come in, and all that. And then how do we get it done? You have to what? Enforce it. And how do you enforce it? Enforce it through resources and through what? Personnel. We have to put this structure in place. In the US, they will tell you that the American Parliament is unique. And you ask yourself, how can American Parliament is unique? It's unique in the sense that when they pass a law, they go out there to inspect whether the law works. Is that the kind of things we want to do here relative to the code of conduct? That yes, it is passed, but can our parliament also take the conversation a notch further and see that the law works? Or do we have a body that makes sure that it works? Because you can pass all the beautiful codes, but when enforcement is not done, when there is no conscious effort to see that it's working, then you come back to square one. So sometimes you realize that logistics to what? A drive home these programs will be non-existent. And above all, we need, the president can have all the good intentions, but if at the end of the day, he cannot discipline people who cross the line, I'm afraid we'll come back to square one. So the president must also demonstrate to us beyond reasonable doubt that he is ready to whip anybody in line and sanction any human being, be he one of his ministers or whoever. Any person who crosses the line, the president will get the courage to put his foot down and say that I'm going to what? Deal with it. I am saying this because there is a certain practice in this country where people fall foul of the law, and then the next day they are knocking at the door of chiefs, important chiefs, to come and intercede on their behalf. And these things don't come public, but behind the scenes they do. As the president, the capacity to tell those chiefs who come in there, as it were, to intercede on their behalf, that please let the law work. We need a president who should have that courage. I believe, I have no doubt in my mind that John Mahama can do that, but he must be able to do this if we want the code to really work.
I'm particularly excited, Kojo, in fact, because this bill, we've been talking about it since 2008, but the 2022 one, which is the current one in waiting, will deal with reforms in declaration of assets, liabilities. And I like that Dr. Kwame Asasant introduced the word conflict of interest, because last year, most of the issues, controversies, in fact, case in point, that sale of 60% of stake in those 4 hotels to Brian Champon's hotel and all that, it was conflict of interest. I think that beyond the bill, we should look at a systemic or an intentional approach to changing the mindset of public officials. It's not enough that we say that this is the conduct of public officials, so you have to stick by it or we are booting you out. People don't even understand why we have these laws in place, though.
But in a country where we've realized that if you leave us to do what we want, we may probably do whatever. I think that, like they said, we should ensure enforcement of the law, if the bill becomes law, is there, so that people know that if you do A and B, there's this punishment with it. Then, of course, we can build.
Maybe that will actually change the mindset of public officials.
Well, okay, that will be solid.
But let's move on to other matters now.
But Dr. Kwapon, let's bring you on and talk about something that this president has been talking about for quite some time. Even in his inaugural speech, he mentioned the constitutional review. We know this has been on the drawing board for some time now. President Atamils put together a committee to look at the Constitution and bring forth some recommendations. It's been on the board for a long time since. This government or president is promising of doing something. What's your expectation?
So, I do expect that, having made commitment to it, and now that there's a report ready, that efforts would be made to really take a look at some of the things that are being proposed and see the ones that feasibly can can be done and can be enacted. I know that as part of the campaign, he also promised some major things. For example, doing away with this whole idea of ex gratia, which would mean that you'd have to take a look at Article 71 and what are the best ways in which you can modify that article to be able to, fulfill such a campaign promise. I know that the general sentiment, at least whenever you follow conversations about the Constitution in public spaces, we tend to blame governance challenges and issues a lot on the Constitution. I mean, there's been even some voices who have said, well, we need a new Constitution. I come from a different disposition when it comes to constitutional review and how often or how quickly you want to tamper with the Constitution. But I believe that where there needs to be some changes or some issues fixed to restore, or should I say, to strengthen the confidence that we have, in our Constitution, it will be very helpful for the president to do that.
Okay. Dr. Asante, where should the government start from if you want to then deal with constitutional review? I've heard about the election of MMDCs, for example. What do you think the president and his government should start from in tinkering with the constitution that we have?
The committee that recently has presented its report, I have glanced through a few pages. I haven't finished. But I said that is a good starting point because they took into consideration the one by Professor Fiajo's committee that went around the whole world and gathered issues and put them together, and it was not attended to. And then in addition to that, they've also added other existing rules and regulations and then solicited a lot of views about it. I think that is the starting point. You look at it and then see what can be added, what can be taken out. If all is said and done, that becomes the first port of call to approach the issues, because the little that I've seen, they've done a whole lot of work and they've talked to almost all the stakeholders, very important stakeholders, and they've come up with certain suggestions which are very beautiful and all that. Even though I've not finished reading, but the few pages I've read, I don't know whether the other pages have that about capping the Supreme Court. I don't know whether it's inside. But if it's not there, it is one omission that I believe that it must be brought to light. Because we cannot continue on this trajectory where government will come and continue to pack the court, and then it creates all manner of problems for us. You will see the attack on the court, and I believe that for us to be able to deal with this problem, we should be able to cap the court and then make sure that we build capacity of the court. If you go to the US Supreme Court, 9 judges, they all sit at a goal. And under each judge, there are crack lawyers who work under them, about 15 of them for each judge, right? If we have a similar thing of this nature, where crack lawyers surround each of the judges, and then they supply him with all the research material that he needs, so that our judges will have time to reflect on what the issues and then handing judgment that will stand the test of time. For the US, they also have a limit that I'm sure they take about 50 cases a year. We should be working towards some of these things so that we don't overburden our judges, and that any time we need their services, they can come in and then deal with issues. If you look at it against the backdrop that recently we heard from the Chief Justice that there is a particular judge who is handling 1,000 cases. Obviously, if we don't take care, we'll have a bad story that this judge can break down. This is not good enough. So some of these things ought to be looked at if we really want to ensure this. But above all, if we get the preparatory work done, we need to have a stakeholder engagement as to what will go into the final, amendment procedure, so that we get all the fine details into the Constitution, and then when we amend it for that will stand for a long time. there are a lot of issues that need to be looked at. So thank God we have something to begin with. So I think that that's the best way to go.
But Dr. Koppon, if you look at the work that the committee led by Oseche Mensah-Bonsu did, I mean, according to him, they wanted to ensure that they open this up for cross-sectional interrogation. They want the people of this country to interrogate the work that they've done. Do you think it's something we should continue, we should allow the people to look at? And what are the significant portions of this constitution, and from the experience you've had from other places, do you think we should probably pay particular attention to?
So definitely engaging the public on some of the proposals will be extremely helpful, because at the end of the day, you also want the support and the goodwill of Ghanaians to back whatever changes that ultimately we would be making, or amendments we'll be making to the Constitution. Public education will be extremely helpful. So this is where the NCC, for example, would have a key role to play in this. For me, I've always said that one of the areas that I would like to see changed is a clean separation between the executive and the legislature, right? I'm not a big fan of having members of parliament also as members of the executive. I know Dr. Asante disagrees with me on that. But if you're a legislature, I want you to be a legislature. And if you are a member of the executive, I want you to be a member of the executive. I think sometimes it makes it very difficult when you live in both worlds to be able to discharge particularly your oversight duties of the executive. So that, for me, it would be one thing that I would like to see modified when it comes to any form of constitutional review. One of my favorite parts of the Ghanaian Constitution is Chapter 6, the Directive Principles of State Policy, which lays very clearly the expectations of the state in terms of the policy deliverables. I think we can take a look at which of them still remain a realistic burden to place on the state, and which ones can be modified and not made a constitutional obligation. But that would be, for me, the two areas of interest for me in any constitutional review efforts.
There've also been talks about a consultative assembly. I don't know whether or not the consultation with the public deals with it, or we have to have specific consultative assembly to look at the aspect of this review. Dr. Asante, if you can take that for me.
Yeah, I think we need a consultative assembly, a body with people with skills and certain important areas of knowledge and expertise to come and look at it critically, right? And then after which we can do that one even side by side. We have the public engagement and all that, and then the body also look at it and then dot the I's, cross the T's, so that at the end of the day, when public engagement have been done and then they are all been factored into the work of the consultative assembly, whatever churn out and now has to be approved by the people, it becomes something beautiful. But if I take the conversation further, one of the areas in the Constitution that I want something to be done about it, recently the Supreme Court touched on it, that is the ruling, partisan, role of chiefs in politics. You saw the Supreme Court ruling. Yeah. The Supreme Court came out with the ruling, but that ruling, with respect, I believe that it is inadequate because there is no sanction. But of course, the Supreme Court cannot sanction. So they finished their bet. The state must take the conversation a notch further by providing sanctions. Because as at the state we have in now, when a chief flouts these rules, what happens? Nothing. So yes, the court has given its ruling. It has finished its job. But sanction regime must accompany this so that any chief who flouts this, there is a punishment for it. Otherwise, we are back to square one. And remember the revered position of our chiefs. So interference in partisan politics will create a problem. And if we want to deal with this problem, there must accompany what? The sanction regime that the court can stand on and sanction any chief who crosses the line.
Well,
but really, as you spoke about we revere our chiefs, and even if you look at what is happening now, we have laws that prohibit certain actions. But when some people are found at the wrong side of the law, we tend to approach it with, as we say, a human face. Do we really believe that the law, as in the law, will deal with this, as you say?
If that is the position, then let's forget about this business of democracy.
Okay.
Because then some people are more equal than others. But we are talking about equality before the law, which has two components. Each individual is equal before the law. That is equality principle. And then due process, that whatever decision you take must reflect the position of the law. So if some people are going to be excluded and giving preferential treatment, then we are back to state of nature. So I believe that if the state is interested in addressing this problem, attach sanction. Are you saying that if a chief commits murder because he's a chief, he will be left off the hook? No. We are all equal before the law.
Mustn't it be much more of implementing or enforcement of the law than just enacting it?
What are you enforcing? You enforce. There is nothing to be enforced here because there is no sanction. You can only enforce and get results when there are sanctions. That yes, we are telling you stop this. If you continue to do this is the punishment for you. Everybody will shy away because of the utilitarian theory that we are interested in what? Enjoying what? Our pleasure than what? We maximize our pleasure and minimize pain. Nobody will cross the line. The chiefs, with all due respect, they are not above the laws. So when they go wrong, we must what? Sanction them. That's it. So that everybody, let me use the youth language, will look sharp.
Dr. Osai Kwapo, where does the review of how we nominate, appoint MMDCs sit in the constitutional review? Because recently we know that the president has revoked the appointment of all MMDCEs, and the argument really has been whether or not we should elect them into office. But where does it sit in the constitutional review? Because it's the constitution that mandates the president to appoint these people. How do we reconcile that?
I mean, there is public appetite for electing these individuals. And so definitely it will require some constitutional amendment to ensure that that comes to life. I know the disagreement the last time under the previous administration, efforts were being made at that, was over whether it should be a partisan election or a non-partisan election. And at the last minute, whatever agreement both sides thought they had on the issue fell apart. Hopefully, the conversation will be resurrected. Hopefully, they would, give it a second try and be able to build some consensus around, not just the election part of it. Because I think there's agreement, and even among the public, there's also agreement on that. It is whether we elect them on a partisan or a non-partisan basis that we've been seeing some major disagreements over there. Those who are opposed to a partisan election argue that we don't want to extend the NDC, NPP issues, tensions, challenges to the local level.
Government, yeah.
But whenever you look at some of these district assembly elections, right, some way, somehow, the people can also tell you who is NDC and who is NPP, even though they're supposed to be non-partisan. But hopefully we can move towards electing them so we don't go through the cycle of replacement and removals once there's turnover, if that is what the public have issues with.
But Doc, is that the key to our quest to solve the problems of inefficiencies at the local government level? election of MMDCs? Is that really what will solve the problems?
I believe it would go a long way to addressing some of these local issues, because then you have a directly elected local government official responsible to the people at the local level who elected him or her, as opposed to the person feeling more accountable to the person who appointed them. I mean, I get surprised that when you look at the Afrobarometer report, for example, on the question of trust, there's very low trust in local government, which surprises me because that is the smallest unit of government, also closest to the people, right? And yet, if something must be done or if people need something at the local level, they always look to what I call Accra, right? They have to wait for Accra to come and, sanction a market. They have to wait for Accra, to come and build a public toilet, for example. I think you can empower these local governments to be able to do more than just that. But that election of them, I believe, will be helpful, will go a long way to strengthen some of the efficiencies around our local government.
Okay. But Doc, whether it should be partisan or not, must that not be left to the citizenry to decide? Organize a referendum and put it to us, whether we want it to be partisan or non-partisan, and then we take the decision.
I agree. And that's where, that agreement fell apart under the previous administration, right? Which is, can we have an agreement and then subject it to a public referendum? Let the people decide whether they want a partisan election or a non-partisan election.
Well, let's look at some of the fallouts, still, after election 2024. There are some people, alleged NDC thugs, who are seizing, ransacking some state institutions. There's also the EC and recollation issues still ongoing. But I want to start from the seizure of state properties and whether or not these thugs can be brought under control. I listened to Patricia PJ, the Deputy Speaker, minority leader, calling on the president, actually, to bring this under control. And the story is on myjoyonline.com. Minorities demanding immediate action from Mahama to halt these attacks. And the recent one, actually, is Electrochem. Some people have ransacked Electrochem offices, and it's really bad. I'm curious to know what you make of it, Dr. Kwame Asante. And they're saying that is because, well, your government is out of power now. Yeah, buying a so that mentality is just not very pleasing sometimes when I hear these comments. But over to you.
There is a certain culture that political parties have introduced into the political space, and that is how far it has brought us, where party faithful, the youth in certain political parties, when they win power. And here I want to lay the blame squarely at the doorstep of the dominant two political parties, NDC and MPP, where they've encouraged these things for a very long time. And we as a society, I've told you some time ago, and I'll continue to repeat, as soon as we are getting to election, we are worried about even the little problems that we can do. We are so worried. As soon as we are out of the election, we'll forget about it. These are some of the things that did not start yesterday. It started a long time. We have only been building on, right? And I believe that crime is crime. It doesn't matter the color that you are wearing. So if we approach it, that democracy is driven by what? Rule of law. That whoever is at the wrong side of the law must be what? Apprehended and then subjected to what? The justice system of the country. It's a very simple matter. But to be able to do this, the police must be given the courage, the encouragement, the support, so to be able to do this work. Sometimes they are also afraid of losing their jobs, because we have seen in this country where some party boys go to do things untoward, police arrest them, and then at the end of the day, you find them on the streets and all that. They will even tell you that it will not go anywhere. We saw, we've seen that. So these people who are doing that, they are nothing but criminal elements who must be arrested, prosecuted, and justice served. Because there's no point. If you want to take a decision that your party has won election, beautiful. The good news is that your party has won election. They are in power. They are in control. So yours, is it a parallel enforcement body? Or there is a legitimate government in place, which is armed with the power. The coercive apparatus are in the hands of the president, using them when the need arises. So what they are doing, is it to augment the effort of the president and his team, or is a parallel enforcement body they are fine? No, it can be. As soon as there's a legitimate government, it's in charge of giving all the government all the resources and the power to do what it's supposed to do. What they are doing is nothing but an aberration. So they must be, called to book straight away.
Right.
They should not spend them at all. Because the more you leave them, they become emboldened.
Yeah.
And then they do more. And then you set bad precedent for future election successes. Those who win will also want to emulate what we are discarding now and then take us to another level. This must end. And how do we get it end? Those people who are destroying state property must be arrested. Because read the Constitution, it said every individual, you are under duty to protect public property and then fight corruption. It's your duty. It's a basic call by the Constitution on individuals in this Constitution, in this country, that you are of you have very important duty. You have that duty to protect public property, and you are destroying. I saw destroying of public buses, and I thought that the car was at the workshop, and then fitters were working on it. And I said, Jesus Christ, is it in Nkrumah's Ghana, or we are in some banana republic? No.
You see, Doc, in a very interesting twist, they think they're actually protecting public property from supposed mismanagement or threats by previous. That's the sense I got from Patricia's message. And they said they are trying to protect the, property from previous administration officials who may loot things before the incoming administration and all that. So really, is it a failure on our side as citizens to understand the due processes involved, or is just a few, of us who don't understand that what we are doing is actually criminal? These people think that they
are just having a field day because you are protecting state property.
Yeah.
Is that your duty? You are usurping the powers of the state. Usurpation of the power. The state has the power to use force when its authority is challenged. The state is giving the power to enforce law and order. So which group is this? Are they part of the executive or part of the legislature? They are nowhere. These are nothing but crimes against the state, and it must be nipped in the bud.
Right.
Well, this started, not today, it's been some ages. But like Dr. Kwame Asante say, the two major political parties have watched on for this to happen. Dr. Kwapon, really, are we beyond finding a solution to this? And if there should ever be a solution, what must it be?
It's still a law enforcement issue. You're correct. There seemed to be this unspoken rule, right, that once there's party turnover, everything must turn over. State institutions, you name it all. Even I think in the past, we've even seen sometimes even fights over public toilets.
It's still happening. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah,
and so there seemed to be
bad.
this sort of unwritten, unspoken rule, which both parties and their supporters also seem to understand and allow to happen. But it is really a law enforcement issue. In the lead up to elections, we tend to focus our energies a lot on, security issues leading up to and on the day of the election. I think we don't tend to put in enough measures post-election. And I'm hoping that as we see these cycles over and over and over again and seeing them again after the 2024 election, we would also start giving more thought and additional efforts towards post-election security of state institutions, state facilities, state buildings. things like that. And then there's also an element of public education that is needed in all of this, which the political parties themselves can help. We need to disabuse the minds of the citizens who engage in these acts, that's not the purpose of electoral victory, right? Especially some of the violence. I mean, so your party has won and you want to burn a building, or you want to destroy some kind of state property. How does that benefit your very party that would have to find new resources to make new provisions for the things that you're destroying, right? Or things that you are violently taking over. There's a process that we can follow to make these things peaceful.
Mm. So it means that we can then blame the police for not doing their work, because there are places where the people who are pushing other people or taking over some public spaces, and we've not been able to arrest and prosecute people. So, I mean, what needs to change then? Because the police know that you have to do your work, yet they are not doing it.
Yeah, it's a law enforcement thing, right? And if you can enforce the law and make, and punish the perpetrators of such acts, hopefully they would serve as a deterrent to others who may want to engage in such conduct. But I can't overemphasize the fact that this really boils down to law enforcement. It's the only way you can check this unfortunate conduct.
I don't know whether because Dr. Asante, as you say, the political parties, both the two leading political parties, the MPP and NDC, they have been doing this, and you said it rightly that sometimes you arrest someone and before you know the person is back on the street. So is there something we can do to tie the hands of these political parties so that they would allow the police the freedom to do their work? You arrest somebody, the person should go in if he or she has to.
Yeah, all that we have to do is that we continue to talk, but if they don't listen, we teach them a lesson at the pool. That is all there is to it. Okay. That we make it a campaign issue that, look, during your tenure, you fail to do ABC, for which reason you are going to suffer punishment. One or two, they will be alert, and then they follow the process. Because, you see, all this while, this problem has been there. But every time we take it another level. My worry is that if we don't tackle it head on, a time will come, we will not have the opportunity to tackle it anymore. Is that what we are looking for? No. Let us, when we advise, we give wise counsel to political actors and they do act, we have political sovereignty. The power is in our hands to change them when we have the slightest opportunity to do that. December 7th, every 4 years. That is where you show them the door. Next time, when you talk to them, they will listen. That is all.
Talking about going to the polls, do you still want to probe this matter? Because I think that brings us to the very last lap.
Because I wanted to ask, and the two of you, any of you can take it. If the police is probably overwhelmed by the post-election security, must we find a way to integrate the military after every election to ensure that these things do not happen?
Oh, the police, I'm not sure. They have the capacity to deal with any internal crisis, right? So for now, let us hasten slowly without bringing soldiers in there. We can make the best out of what the civilian authority using the police to handle this. If we strengthen their hand and the political actors will take their hands off them for them to work. Okay. So once they get that assurance and it is put into practice, and then they do their work, I'm afraid that I can tell you, Ghana police, they can maintain law and order rigidly like what exists in other jurisdictions. You recall a time when a police officer was murdered and was buried under a certain building in the 90s, right? The police moved in and got the perpetrators and dealt with them. Okay. If we arm the police, I can assure you, they will do the needful.
Okay. All right.
Yes, I agree. I agree with Dr. Sasanti. The police is capable of doing this.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I thought there was more coming from you. I wanted to go to Ablekuma North because they still haven't been able to conclude on who is parliamentary MP-elect. I know the NPP's Ekwe is claiming victory, and she says she's going to fight till the end because she knows she has won. Victor, being the returning officer, has resigned. He says this is too much for him.
He's not coming back.
And what I want to find out from Dr. Kwame Asasante, are you surprised, disappointed, or nonchalant that it's from 7 December 2024, today is the 10th of January 2025, and we haven't concluded on these election disputes and, you know, parliamentary elections and all these issues coming up, because we are still getting some scuffles, you know, at collation centers. How does all of this make you feel?
I am not surprised, because you see, if you are a watcher of the electoral space, the pre-election phase, the election phase, the post-election, right? Each of the phases is so difficult. So difficulties can come, particularly so when you are talking about conflict. Conflict is not easy to handle. Disagreement, I mean, it's not easy. And here we are talking about what? Conflict that extend to what? Power acquisition. Remember, power is the ability to induce obedience. So once you have it, it's enough resources to turn things around. So nobody wants to leave it to chance. And that's what we are seeing. But the good news is that you have an appropriate forum, which is the court, to deal with this. So once they struggle, they shout, and I am not worried at all. Once you hit the court, the appropriate forum, the institutions there will resolve these things. So now it's at the institutional level. The EC is handling, if they are not able and the matter gets to the court will definitely terminate the process. That one, we can be assured of that. But it gives us food for thought that the EC must know that the collation processes, there are problems with it. So that next time when we are going for election, they will look at it, they revise their notes, and then make sure that they sanitize the process and will get the best. Because the voting was smooth and all that, but the collation was trouble. And then we need to move upon it. I believe that there is nothing that we cannot work at. There's always a way out.
Dr. General Saikapon, what about you? Also because you a fellow of the CDD, what does this say about evolution in terms of democracy, and particularly to elections? Is this something that is just normal, happens, or we should actually take a closer look at it?
I think we should. I mean, I regularly argue that Ghanaians have made their peace with democracy. We've bought into this idea of using elections regularly to choose our leaders. The collation part of our election shouldn't be the most, in my opinion, difficult or challenging, right? Because we've all voted at a particular polling station. We've publicly counted the votes. We've all agreed that person A got this number, that number. And at the collation phase, all we are doing, it sounds very simple, but really all we are doing at the collation stage is aggregating the results, putting everything together from all the polling stations and saying, this is the final tally. And so it surprises me a little bit to see that it is creating all of these issues and all of this. For me, then, the one thing we must focus on as we prepare, as we reflect on 2024 and prepare for the next election is, should the election management body, the EC, find issues with the collation, what is the appropriate forum to have that resolved? My preference would be that to have some guidelines in place that allows the EC to do that administratively, right, without running to the court too many times. If the EC is unable to, and there are real legal infractions, sure, we can always go to the court. But we need to put in some guidelines and mechanisms that says that if something untoward happened during the collation process, that you allow the EC administratively to fix that. And hopefully we can come up with some good guidelines that would prevent this delay. As Sweetie said, I mean, you've had the election on December 7th, and as of January 10th, we still can't finish coalition for a constituency. It's worrying, and it can generate unnecessary tension, you know, in a given constituency.
Well, I've been having a discussion with a group of people, and they tend to say that the media should help resolve this, that we were there, so we should also help in making our figures available. But the question is, can the media really help in resolving this? In what capacity? Dr. Zekwapo, if you can start for me, then I'll come to Dr. Asante.
I mean, apart from the media, you know, reporting, you know what happened at these polling stations and collation centers, I'm not sure what else the media can really do to resolve this. The political parties, their agents are supposed to have, you know, copies of, you know, the poll results, you know, pink sheets, collation sheets, all of that. So again, if we have all of that, why are we still unable to determine the winner of a given election? I mean, there are still issues about, well, you know, some pink sheets are missing, some collation sheets are not available, all of that. And yes, the media can come in to help us verify some of these facts, report the truth of what happened or didn't happen and what are some of the issues. But beyond that, it is still up to the EC as the election management body to resolve this. But to resolve this, they also need the cooperation of the political parties to be able to do that.
All right. So that Dr.
No, let's take Dr. Kwame Asante's take on that. I'm curious to hear you out. Yeah.
I believe that the media should not come in at all because one, they are not, you know, they don't have capacity to be in the legal capacity. They don't. Unless, of course, we want to include them. But that one, I will find it even problematic. Because remember, the media houses are mostly, you know, established by political actors, which they have some interest in there. So you will never know.
It's just recent. Maybe the person was talking about Joy FM, like multimedia, which is quite known to be independent, fearless, and credible, to say that, well, you could come in here and buy and help us settle this.
Who said that everybody accepts you?
You accept that, so that's enough.
I do, but not everybody. And so that cannot be the standard. I know Joy. Yeah. I'm dealing with a credible institution. There's no doubt about that. But who else also share the same view with me? That's a different story. But we have institutions that by law, it is their duty to do this. Let us strengthen them. I think that what we can look at is that the counting and then at the polling station, we should have more opportunity for people to take records. What are some of the records? Can be on the walls. They can be quickly be put on the EC system immediately, just after that. It's put on the EC system, and then maybe there is a certain backup somewhere where the parties all have their signatures and all in there. It gets in there so that in case we are hot, we can, you know, deal with this. But you see, all these things we are getting, one of the problems we have is that the two dominant political parties do not, one of them, always the two, depending on whoever is in office, don't trust the EC. Yes. So whatever the EC, this thing could have been resolved by the EC easily, but the two parties do not trust the EC from the word go. So it creates a problem. So the way out is that we should be able to think outside the box and create something that we can, in case of need, we can fall on that and then, you know, look at that and then we'll respond to it. Okay. Maybe going forward, if we look at the way people don't have trust in the EC and all that, is it not about time that we look at the South African experience, where they don't look for people even from the country to man the EC. They pick people from other countries that they man the electoral commission. That's the experience of the South Africa. They go elsewhere, get people. Like you see what is in Gambia. Gambia, sometimes they pick Supreme Court judges from other Commonwealth countries, including Ghana. so that the person has no interest in there. He's a foreigner, he's doing his work. Can that work? Maybe we'll have to think about it.
That would be brilliant, if you ask me.
Really?
Yeah. So you're not affiliated to any party, you don't sympathize with any faction, you're just there for the work, objectively, and that's the end of it.
What if the person is also not happy about how you become a beacon of hope in Africa or can do things to destabilize your democracy? Anyway, but well, we can look at the two options and see.
But thank you so much, Dr. Kwame Asa-Sante, head for the Center of European Studies at the University of Ghana, and Dr. John Osai Kwapom, a fellow of the Center for Democratic Development. Thank you all so much for joining us to discuss these many issues. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Osai Kwapom, salute.
Yeah, he did? I missed that. But Kojo, I mean, the work ahead of us is a lot.
Yes.
Although we have a new administration, the work ahead of us, we should not joke with it at all. If we are still, ransacking places because we think our government, our, parties in power, it says a lot about the mindset of the kind of people who are doing this, you know.
I think it should start right from the schools and don't wait till upper primary. It should start from the lower primary. We should inculcate in the children a certain sense of belongingness, patriotism. Such that whatever you do, you put your country first before parties. You ask yourself, what I am doing, is it hurting the country Ghana or it's hurting my party? If it's hurting Ghana, you stop it. Because in the end, it is not about a political party. It is about the state called Ghana. And the state called Ghana is run by the taxes of you and I. So how do you want your money to be spent? I don't want my money to be spent on some frivolous things or repairing things that I broke, deliberately. If I broke it accidentally, that's different. But when I know I am destroying this thing because I think my party is in power, then of course, what am I doing? Let me, on the same score, commend some NDC guys in my constituency, Hunter West. Because when I went there, I saw them, they had taken over a refuse dump in the community, Agran Kwanta. Before, the place was so dirty. The rubbish was just around the bin, so untidy. And in the news, whenever they bring you pictures of Hunter West, Agran Kwanta specifically, you would ask her, why does this happen? But they took over, then took away all the rubbish and filled the place with clay. Did it nicely because they use the drip machines. The drip has a lot of machines that you can use in doing this. They filled it. The place was so clean and put back the refuse dump again. Ensure that you don't put the refuse on. So rather, instead of you breaking the things, do it cordially. So probably we can also acknowledge the MPP for agreeing that, okay, we are ceding to you. It's yours. Come for it. But they took it over and did it so beautifully. So instead of destroying it, they made it better from the way it was looking. So I think
forward-thinking people.
Yes, people should see it as, this is for Ghana. It's not about for me or for the party. And depending on how I do it, it inures to my benefit and the community as well. So I think
this is the point where I want to call on the creative industry. Listen, at the core of agenda setting and, orientation, the sort of content we produce doesn't instill the sense of patriotism in you. If it's not witchcraft, if somebody has taken somebody's husband and, the storyline is always very average. Or when you watch the movies, content we consume from the West, they're very proud, and we are Americans, or we are what, and the story tells you how they put their heroes and how the country comes first. We should start producing content that puts us on the globe and projects the positive aspects of our lives and instill the sense of patriotism in us rather than witchcraft and, rivalry and all that. Stay with us. There's more action coming your way on the AM show. We'll be interacting with you shortly. You get to have your say. We open the phone lines when we return from the break. Please stay. We'll be back in a bit.